Really great to be here again. One of my favorite conferences here, FOSSASIA, so I'm really happy to be back. And of course, I have the same boring topic as everybody to talk about AI. It's the hot new thing at the moment, and there's a lot of things to consider. Introduction of myself a little bit. I'm the founder and CEO of Nextcloud. I'm doing open source for 25 years. Yes, I'm old. I think it was even before the term open source was created. But of course, nowadays, I'm doing mostly Nextcloud. This is why I was invited. And we have some new challenges now with AI that I want to talk about today. So the goal when I started Nextcloud was to be an alternative to this guys here. Right? I mean, at the time, like 12 years ago, we're moving into a world where some like 5 big companies are getting control of all our data, all our communication. They're sucking up all our IT infrastructure, all our communication, everything we do. So we move into a world, a dystopian world, where some like big companies control everything we do in our digital world. So this is a dystopia from my perspective, and this is what I tried to solve with Nextcloud. So Nextcloud is of course an open source alternative to Microsoft 365, to Google Workspace, to Slack, Zoom, Dropbox, and so on. The difference is obviously that Nextcloud is open source and you can run it completely on premise on your own infrastructure as you want. So Nextcloud gives you control back over your data and your communication. You don't have to give everything you do to these big tech companies. You can just take the software, it's completely open source, put it like on a Raspberry Pi or some bigger machine, and then you're in control of your data. You have everything local and under your control. You can look into the source code, and this gives you the privacy and security you want. This is why we have structured our product in these 4 areas. Nextcloud Files is for files you can share, like Dropbox. Nextcloud Talk is for chat and video conferencing. There's Groupware for mail, calendar, contacts, and there's Office for editing Office documents. Very similar, as you know, from Google, Microsoft, and others. A little bit of an overview. This is Nextcloud Files, everything you expect. You can upload and download your files. You can share them. You can version them. You can delete and undelete them. You can search them, everything you expect. Then there's Nextcloud Talk, of course, for chat and video conferencing. This is the chat interface, very similar to Slack or Teams. Then, of course, you can press a button and turn it into a video call. We also have like iOS and Android clients with push notifications and chat, everything you expect. Again, everything open source, everything locally running. Then it's, of course, Groupware for mail, calendar, and contacts. Everything you expect there. Very powerful mail client to manage all your emails with priority inbox, with searching, everything you expect. And Nextcloud Office for editing Office documents. Again, everything open source and everything local and everything great. So I'm happy to say that we are like the alternative to Microsoft if you care about FOSS and about open source. This is what we did. This was the situation like a year ago. And then came AI. And then everything changed. Because I have to say, first of all, I got a little bit of a depression here because I was like thinking, okay, shit, like, can we really do the same thing that Microsoft and Google are doing? Can we do as a small company, as a small open source project, can we really compete with all these AI features that these big tech companies are doing? Are we really able to compete with just a few people? And second is, even if we could, do we even want to? Because AI comes with a lot of ethical and tricky privacy questions. So even if we could implement everything with AI, do we even want to? Is this the right thing to do with our mission? Because as I told you earlier, our goal is to give people control over their data, to get everything open source, everything transparent. Is this AI thing even compatible with these ideals in this vision? Because as you know, AI comes with a lot of different things. First of all, it comes with good things, right? It can be your assistant, it can be your helper, it can support you, make your life easier, and like just remove boring tasks from you, right? But of course, it also comes with some problems. It comes with some dark sides, right? And there are some ethical considerations. So how do we deal with that, right? And we are not the only ones with these ethical considerations. Here's just a few articles from the press. There are companies like Apple and Samsung and Goldman Sachs and many others, and they're banning the use of ChatGPT and Copilot and other solutions. They're banning it internally in the organization. So why is that? First of all, there's the challenge of like misinformation. That is a real problem with AI and it's still unsolved. And second, there's also the privacy and security question, because it is absolutely possible that one company is asking ChatGPT for some feedback of some new document, some contract, some concepts, whatever. And then like another company comes along, the competitor, and they ask the similar questions and they get answers based on the documents of the competitor, right? Because this goes into the training data and that's a real problem. So there's a lot of ethical considerations around AI. And this brought us to the point that we said, okay, first of all, we need to try to compete with big tech here. We want to try to do everything as open source. And so we formed our own team. So like a bit over a year ago, we formed our own dedicated AI team at Nextcloud to work on those things. And second is, we had a lot of discussions internally and externally of Nextcloud with experts to think about ethical AI. So is there something we can do to create like a framework to put this all into the right perspective to make sure that we have the right ethical consideration? Of course, you ask, okay, ethical AI, big term, right? What do you mean? Ethical is great, but what are the details here? So it's of course not very hard to find the potential problems with AI. You just need to look a little bit into the press. You need to read some articles. So the first question is of course discrimination, right? A lot of these AI models, they are trained on the internet, and the internet is not exactly diverse and fair, right? So obviously these models also have the same problems. For example, if you ask the image generator, hey, can you please generate a photo of a doctor? Then you probably get a photo of a white man, right? Because this is how most doctors on the internet look like. And this is obviously a problem. So what can we do here? Is this a good thing to go down this route or not? Second question, what about the CO2 emissions? I mean, all these big hosting centers with these gigantic numbers of GPUs, they generate a huge amount of CO2 by consuming lots of electricity. Is this something good? Is this ethical? Does this fit the Nextcloud values or not? Should we do this or not? Next is the privacy aspect. As I said earlier, there's a danger of that some data is leaking from one organization to another based on the training data. This is something to consider. Again, is this something we should do or not? And then of course there's the question, is it all freely available? One of the big benefits of Nextcloud is everything we do is open source and free. You can just go to the website and download it for free. Obviously, Copilot and other solutions are not free. You need to pay for that monthly as a subscription. So are these new AI features actually available to everybody, or just available for some people who can afford it? So these are all really important questions that we wanted to answer. So what we did then is we created this ethical AI framework where we said, okay, we want to rate all AI systems on the internet and all the things we also do internally based on this system. And we have this traffic light system from green, where everything is like ethical according to our standards, and red, which is not. And this is measured based on 3 requirements. First, code should be open source. I mean, this is an open source event here. Obviously, the code should be open source. Why is this important? Because then you can run it locally, you can measure the energy consumption, you can optimize it, you can improve it. So having the code open source is very important. Second is the model should be available, which means if the model is available, you can use it locally and run it locally in your secure environment. The leading AI systems at the moment, GPT-4, for example, are not available, right? I mean, it's a bit of a joke that OpenAI is called open. They are like most closed organization ever, right? So you can just use it, but you have no idea what's behind the black box. So this is not good. The model should be available. And then last but not least, the training data should also be available, because then you can look for biases. Then you can look for things that are not good. You can improve it over time. But this is just really, really important. And if like all 3 requirements are fulfilled, then this is a green system. If none of it is fulfilled, this is a red system. So everything we do is then rated with the system. So you as a user, you can decide which feature to activate and what feature not to activate. But let's talk a bit about Nextcloud, what we actually do here. That's of course the important thing. The first is the strategy that we follow, that we always have the flexibility in our software. So this is the settings screen of Nextcloud. and you can just, for example, say, hey, for the translation system, I want to use like ChatGPT as a service over the internet, which is a red system because nothing is transparent. But if you want, you can do it. Or you can run a different model, which is completely open source and completely local. For example, the Opus model from Helsinki, and this runs completely locally in open source, and it's also easy to configure, and you have the choice. You can decide what you want to do. Same is with all other features. If you want to use speech-to-text features, you can decide to use a service on the internet, or you can decide to reuse something completely open source running locally. And this is for all the features we do. So this gives you the transparency that you want. But this is mostly using other people's systems. Of course, we as Nextcloud, with our new AI team, we focus on developing AI systems and models that are completely local and completely open source. So let's go through this a little bit and let me show you what we can do here. So there are a lot of different places where we already implemented AI features. This effort started like 2 years ago already with some smaller things like image recognition, face recognition. If you upload your photos, for example, we can already do that and then search for it in the search. You can search for a dog and find all the photos from your vacation, which contains a dog. So that's very straightforward. And we have some other features like suspicious login generation, related resources and other things. But it gets like really, really interesting when you look into the assistant, because this was our main effort, like in the last, like one little bit over a year, where we developed the Nextcloud Assistant. Nextcloud Assistant is something like the Copilot for Microsoft or similar solutions. And this is using a large language model. This is 100% open source and transparent. And this is 100% self-hosted. You can actually run this if you want on a Raspberry Pi. It is not super fast on a Raspberry Pi, but it works. And this is something like a, as I said, Copilot, completely open source and completely transparent. And according to our rating, an ethical and green AI system. So what can you do? It can do lots of things. The obvious thing is, of course, you can always activate it with a button and a top navigation, and you have an input where you can ask all kinds of questions, very similar to ChatGPT. That's obviously an easy feature. But then it becomes really powerful if you look into the integrations into the rest of Nextcloud. Let me show you some things. The first is integration Nextcloud Text. Nextcloud Text is our collaborative markdown editor that we have inside Nextcloud. And here's a quick video how this works. For example, if you have a text document, you just go into it. You want to mark a text. There's automatically the assistant popping up. You can say generate a headline, translate it, formulate it differently, make it a nicer text, or check for errors and all kinds of things, and it gives you an input, and with just one button you can insert the result back into the document. Like in this case, it generated a headline automatically based on the text. So this is a feature that is available everywhere in Nextcloud when you work with text. So this is a very nice, powerful feature. Then next example is mail. Nextcloud Mail is of course our integrated mail client, and it really has a number of interesting features. First of all, it has on the left side a priority inbox. So you can already learn and detect which mails are important for you and show you the important mails on top, priority inbox. Then we have a cool feature on the right side where on top of an email thread, you get a summary of the email thread. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, sometimes you get so many emails, you don't have the time to always read them. So you have a nice summary of an email thread on top here, which is very useful. Then obviously the Nextcloud Assistant can be used to generate a mail. Let's say you want to write a mail and you can say, hey, generate this mail to my marketing to blah, 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 and it automatically generates a mail for you. You can review it and you can just send it. Then a cool feature, and that we just launched like last month, part of the Assistant 2.0, is a feature where it can suggest replies to emails. So this is a system where you can just say, hey, I want to reply to this mail, and just give me a draft how a reply could look like. And it gives you a nice suggestion how this email reply should look like. Obviously, you should always proofread that, but that's very useful. And again, just let me stress, I think we're the only ones who can do this completely local and completely open source without using any whatever open AI or other systems. Then we have Nextcloud Talk, which is our chat and video conferencing tool. There are also lots of features where they use AI to improve the experience here. One is, of course, automatic translations, because we as Nextcloud, we are an international team. We have people in 22 countries. So we always communicate with different languages. So there's a feature built in where you can just automatically translate all chat messages in other languages, which is super useful to communicate with others. Then there's a feature, of course, for text, for image generation. Let's say you want to visualize something, and here's the obviously needed cat picture. I mean, every presentation needs a cat picture. So here you can just generate a nice picture of a cat and automatically insert into the chat or anything else that's useful, which is sometimes nice for just for fun or to visualize or to brainstorm about something. Then, of course, you can always chat with the assistant directly in the chat itself. Let's say we have a project conversation. You talk with your colleague about something, and at any time you can just say, "Hey, assistant, what are the most important things to organize a trade show?" And it gives you the answers directly in the chat. So it's really like a human assistant that you can ask at any time anything, and the answer is just posted in your conversation with your colleagues, which is super useful. And then another feature of the Nextcloud Assistant 2.0 launched last month is the way to summarize chat conversations. I don't know about you, but sometimes the chat conversations can be very long. I mean, I'm part of the FOSSASIA Telegram channel here, and I don't know about you. I'm totally flooded. I cannot read anything. It's just too much. Here with the Nextcloud Assistant, you can just at any time say, "Hey, please summarize that. What happened since yesterday?" And it gives you a nice summary of everything that was discussed in the chat conversation. Obviously, a super useful feature too. Then we have, as I showed earlier, also speech-to-text features where you can dictate. Some people like to dictate their emails or their chat messages. This is something you can do. But this is also a useful feature in other cases. For example, if you do a video call, you can, every video call Nextcloud Talk, you can get a recording, have a recording of your conversation, and you automatically get a transcript of every video call too, and also a summary of it, which is shared with everybody in the video call. So you always have a nice summary, what was discussed when, and this is also using our speech-to-text feature. So these are so far quite cool features, I think, but very standard, very straightforward. But we also want to innovate a little bit. And since half a year, we're working on a feature which I think is specifically cool. And this is something we call context chat. So that's the Nextcloud Assistant context chat. So what is that? Everything I showed you so far was a system where there's a model which was pre-trained somewhere or fine-tuned on some data somewhere, but the results are basically already in the model, right? It doesn't really understand the context. It doesn't really understand your local data. So what we are doing here with the context chat is, from a technical side, to explain it a little bit, we use something that's called a vector database that is connected with a model with a tool called LangChain. This has the advantage that the assistant actually knows my data. So the Nextcloud Assistant knows all my emails, it knows all my documents, it knows all my chat messages, all my calendar appointments and everything, so on. So at any time you can ask, "Hey, can you please summarize the requests I got from Ross like last week?" And of course the assistant knows all my emails. I give you a nice summary about the communication that happens with Ross like in this time frame. That's a very powerful feature, and you can query and interact with everything that is in Nextcloud, again, completely local, completely on-premise, completely open source. I don't think there's anyone else who can do something like that. And of course, it can be also used in other places. For example, here's Nextcloud Deck. This is our project management tool. It's a Kanban board. You can say, "Hey, can you please give a summary how we typically organize events?" And you can look through all the cards, everything in your project management tool, and give you a nice answer, looking at the past projects, last events, how this is usually done. And this is, I think, a very, very powerful tool. This feature also comes with a sister feature. This is something we call context write. This is also quite cool. This can generate documents based on an existing document with additional input. For example, you can say, "Hey, I want to take, I don't know, this PDF or this Excel sheet or something that I used in the past." And you take this as an input and say, "Okay, can you please like generate a PDF very similar to this PDF, but with these changes, a little bit more funny, with, I don't know, different year, different dates, whatever. And it can generate a document based on the existing document with additional input. I think this is also super productive and super useful. So to summarize that, so my depression is a bit over now because I think my two challenges from a year ago we could solve. First is we could put all of that into an ethical context. We could say, okay, can we do this completely local? Can we have the training data completely transparent? Can we make sure that no data is floating anywhere else? Can we measure the CO2 output of the system and so on? And this is possible, and we make everything transparent here. And the second is, can we even compete with these big companies? And the answer is yes. Just to be clear, that's not all of us alone. As we learned at a previous presentation, there's a huge open source community around AI features now. And of course, we're working together with them. We have some of our own models, but others we work together with others. And this is really, really nice. So yes, the answer is the open source community can compete. We can do something that's better that comes from Google or Amazon or Microsoft or from others. So this is the end of my presentation. There's a last thing I want to mention, that we're also hiring. So Nextcloud is an organization, like a company, which is a little bit over 100 people now. I'm based in Germany, but we are international. We actually have people in 22 countries, and we're looking for help from people who are really interested in doing something ethical and good. Obviously, everybody who is interested in AI features, people who are interested in Python or PHP or JavaScript, Vue.js development, or if you're just a beginner and you're looking for an internship, then just go to our website or contact me directly. And I think together we can make the world a bit better in a nice open source way. Thanks a lot.